most devastating in terms of damage, property damage in United States history. This is Hurricane Andrew making dead aim. The eye of the storm, well, onshore just south of Miami, Cutler Ridge estimated to be landfall, and probably to take place probably just before 5 o'clock local time, which is certainly not very far in the distance. Actually, the last couple of frames that we're showing you here, we don't have any input from the Miami radar site. Nonetheless, you can see that we still have a very intense hurricane. We're getting information out of West Palm Beach and on up in Tampa, for example. Sustained winds of this hurricane estimated to be 140 miles per hour. Central pressure around 936 millibars or so. Not quite as strong as it was earlier on Sunday when we had sustained winds of 150 miles an hour and a pressure down to about 923 millibars. At that time, if we had kept that same intensity, we would have been talking about the third strongest hurricane to make landfall in, well, let's say in this century. We'll just go back this century. But that is significant. The only two Category 5 storms that have made landfall this century. Labor Day hurricane back in 1935, which made landfall here in the Florida Keys, and then go back to 1969, Hurricane Camille. Well, this is not quite as strong as either of those two, but this is still a major, significant Category 4 hurricane, and as you can see, the eye of the storm is very close to making landfall out here. Should be a scant 2 hours, if that. Certainly southern portions of Miami, unfortunately destined to be raked by some strong, strong winds indeed. Again, right along the north eye wall, and just to the north, that's where we normally experience the very strongest of winds. Okay, let's go ahead and give you some more information here. We'll give you the particulars here. Let's go back to that map. Yeah, that one right there, because this has what I want to show you. The coordinates, if you're plotting it, and actually now it's somewhat closer than 40 miles east of Miami. It's more likely almost just 20 miles east and a little south of Miami. Moving west at 18 miles per hour. Central pressure has dropped again down to 936 millibars. Again, sustained winds, 140 miles per hour, but again, wind gusts. Top of that, we're talking probably wind gusts to 160 miles an hour. The warnings, you saw where the warnings were, Vero Beach southward and then on up the west coast towards Venice. Strike probability, yeah, we'll have to take that inshore just south of Miami. Surge Biscayne Bay could easily be 13 feet, and we're talking high tide, just about time of landfall, so we're bringing the 13 feet surge, the 13-foot possible surge that is, on top of already high water with a high tide. Then on top of that, wind-blown waves. Again, you can understand why sometimes survivors of hurricanes are found 20, 30 feet up in trees. That's above mean water level. We've already had wind gusts in Miami around 52 miles an hour with even hurricane-force wind gusts in other areas of the area. Here, a tornado watch for South Florida.
Good morning. We're live in the Weather Channel Forecast Center. It's August 24th, 1992, a day that undoubtedly will go down in history as a very strong, dangerous Hurricane Andrew makes its way towards southern Dade County in Miami, Florida. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this hurricane looks like. Some of the latest radar imagery showing perhaps the outer eye wall just starting to come into some of the outer banks here. So these could cause some real big problems as it moves its way on toward the west. Obviously some pretty good rain here, Miami through Biscayne Bay and across a good part of South Dade County as this continues to move off to the west at about 20 miles an hour and is easily less than an hour and a half away. So folks, again, we haven't heard a lot of damage reported yet, but I'm sure things are going to go downhill very, very rapidly when we're talking about this area right in here is packing winds of at least 140 miles an hour. Plus, it's moving on off toward the west at about 20 miles an hour. Dennis Smith is down in Miami, Florida, and Dennis is going to give us the latest on what he is experiencing.
This is Dennis.
Dennis, you're with us.
The very latest from Coral Gables is we continue to get worsen on the weather situation. We're continuing to plow. The winds a little bit stronger. And in fact, the winds are probably, we think went over the last 5 to 10 minutes, probably gusting up to about 80 to 90 miles an hour. We continue to get some wind-whipped rain. And we've had power outage in this immediate area for about the last 20 minutes, and we can still see pops of blue on the horizon, meaning that there's still some more transformers popping or power lines snapping. There is some downed trees, even around the area where we're staying right now. We've heard glass being blown out, as well as some of the roofing, the metal part of the roofing being peeled off. So conditions continue to worsen as the storm continues to move on in, as expected, with landfall expected probably within the next hour at about 5 o'clock a.m. It looks like we'll continue to see the winds climb on up. But our current conditions at Coral Gables is one of about 80 to 90 miles an hour, and an occasional gust, and the rain and squalls can continue to come on down. Jim?
All right, thank you, Dennis. John Hope, you're looking at Dennis there live. What do you think he's experiencing?
Well, as you can see, the weather deteriorated very, very quickly there. He's getting gusts up to 80 or 90 miles an hour, and that's, you know, it wasn't very easy to stand up, and it's almost impossible to stand up in that kind of wind. Also, you get that rain and burst. It seems to come horizontally. You can't see very far, and the noise picks up, and it's, and the eye wall is not really quite there yet. And when he gets the eye wall there, it'll be much worse than he sees at this moment.
What kind of time are we talking about? It's 4 o'clock in the evening now.
Well, within about an hour or so at the most, maybe a little bit less than that. It's moving a little bit faster, so it's going to be in there very, very shortly.
John, what do you think the folks are going to find when they get back to their homes this afternoon to assess some of the damage?
Well, in the area where the hurricane was the worst, of course, people who live on the open beach and on some of the keys offshore, Key Biscayne and so on, are going to find, I think, a lot of tidal flooding there. We expect the storm surge in Biscayne Bay itself to be up to 13 feet, so it'll be that kind of tidal flooding. There'll be a lot of trees down. There'll be some structural damage, certainly to houses, to structures, to windows that aren't boarded up, and so on. There'll be a lot of debris in the streets, almost impossible to move around, I'm sure, until the streets are cleared off. It takes a while to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And folks, a reminder, you know, don't go back to your homes to assess some of the damage if you're watching us down in South Florida until the authorities tell you to do so. There could still be some power lines that are live and things like that. We don't want you to suffer any worse damage than you need to. All the hotel rooms along Interstate 75 and 95 are filled up all the way up into southern Georgia, so hopefully the people took heed of the warnings with Hurricane Andrew and made their way out safely. So we'll find out how things are going as we get the assessments from South Florida. Folks, stay with us. We'll continue to update Andrew live as it makes landfall within the next hour or two. Stay with us.
The Weather Channel keeps up to the minute on Hurricane Andrew, so you can too. Coming up, we'll give you the latest details.
Making here on this August 24th, and that history is Hurricane Andrew. Let me show you what Hurricane Andrew looks like here from this is the radar perspective, and when it gets this close, it's always nice to be able to use the radar because you can really pick out the center of the storm as well as the strongest, most intense eye wall area, and of course the outer bands, which are now affecting most of Florida coastline from Fort Lauderdale on up through Palm Beach, including Vero Beach. Well, here's the eye. Made landfall this morning about 4:45 this morning in southern Dade County. And unfortunately for the folks around Key Biscayne, at the time of high tide, I would imagine there's going to be a lot of things assessed, and one of those things will be a lot of problems with beach erosion and things like that. Storm surge was approximately high, as well as came in at the time of high tide, so some problems there. As the storm makes its way across South Florida, we really have to pay attention to the other side of the state, because places like Marco Island and also Sanibel Island are not going to really feel the effects from the northerly winds and northerly rain shields that you're getting now. But when the storm passes to your west, it's the southwesterly winds and also potentially the storm surge that could affect that area. We're not telling the folks that to alarm them, but we are telling them that because we want them to be prepared. Let's go to some video shot just about the time of landfall in the downtown Miami area. And again, folks, this is the worst of Hurricane Andrew. Power lines being snapped, trees just uprooted in a lot of locations, lights just blown out. We were talking to Dennis Smith earlier, and he was going live right through the time of on landfall, and he was telling us how he just saw trees just down from where he was looking, which is very near the Hurricane Center, just uprooted, and all sorts of problems with glass being shattered in the downtown. There you can see a transformer being blown out by that color there, and obviously the waves kicking up. This is the MacArthur Parkway area heading out toward the beach. Yeah, a stiff wind to say the least in this area, and when the sun comes up, we don't expect things to be pretty in this area. We even had a report of the Hurricane Center, which is on the 6th floor of the building in Coral Gables. The 7th floor had ceiling tides which were blown out from the ceiling there because of the force of the wind. The radar in Miami went out, which is on top of the roof, but we did get reports out of the Hurricane Center of winds that gusted to 165 miles an hour, and we also had some reports of 115 miles an hour at Miami International Airport. So some problems there, and here you can see what happened when the hurricane made landfall about 4:45 a.m. this morning. Now behind me is a an infrared satellite picture, and you can see as the hurricane has moved on across, sure enough, we had a very, very powerful storm system to start with. And then the storm system may have weakened a little bit as it moved east of Eleuthera Island, but then it looked like as it went over the warm Gulf Stream waters, we probably saw it strengthen just a little bit further as it made its way into southern Dade County approximately 4:45 this morning. Now, folks, this is something not to be taken lightly as we watch this storm system working its way across. Florida, yes, you're getting it right now. In some places you may have gotten the worst of it, but we have to think about the Gulf of Mexico. We have to think back perhaps to what Hurricane Betsy did in 1965, how it came through southern Florida and then went up to the northern Gulf states. Perhaps the track of this will be very, very similar. The storm system may not weaken as it goes over land. It may actually strengthen when it gets back out in the Gulf of Mexico and may affect the northern Gulf states as early as Wednesday morning. So, again, something really to watch for here as we go on in time. Hurricane warnings are still posted on the western side of Florida. Now, again, I want to emphasize for the folks in Marco Island and Sanibel Island, we're not telling you this to make you scared or run for the hills, but we're telling you that you could get affected by the very, very strong hurricane force winds as well as some of the storm surge, not as the storm passes to your west, but as it, as the storm is to your east, but as it passes to your west and you get that southwesterly whip, all that air and water is just funneled right up toward Marco Island as well as Sanibel. So just be cautious and be ready for some adverse weather as the storm passes to your west. Folks, stay with us here on the Weather Channel. We will continue to update you on Andrew. We're going to talk to some hurricane experts this morning. John Hope getting a little rest after a busy night. Stu Ostro, who is a senior meteorologist here at the Weather Channel, he's going to come in and give us his perspective on this hurricane, a very dangerous one, and sure enough, history in the making today and perhaps even during the midweek with a possible landfall in the northern Gulf states. So stay with us. Let's go to your